Ego is a word that has different meanings for everyone. And I guess the most common way people think of their egos is as, that thing that makes that guy at the party try too hard to feel like he's a god, or that part of people that makes them treat others as inferiors, or that part of yourself that makes you feel like you always have to achieve more and be more and have more in order to feel satisfied. And well, I guess most people don't even think of their egos, and that makes sense because there's really not a clear definition of what the ego is in society. But the way I think of the ego is as your self-concept, your sense of self, who you think you are, what you think you are, what you identify yourself with. And everyone has an ego as long as they're alive. The ego is not a good or bad thing because at the most basic level, what the ego is it's that thing that makes you feel what you are and separates you from the rest of the world, You feel that you are your body, you are your mind, but you are not your external world. And that mental construct is what the ego is. Yet humans are interesting because apart from identifying ourselves with our physical bodies and our minds, we also extend our egos with our possessions or with our titles or with power. So like a man that, has a big house and lots of money, maybe lots of fame, lots of influence. All of these things that are part of his life are, in a way, extensions of his ego. They are things that makes him feel more, that he is more. And it does feel good to have a big ego, to have an inflated ego, but I think it's important to understand that the ego is very fragile, and every single person is going to go through experiences where their ego is destroyed. There's just no way of avoiding it. And that's because the ego is like a sandcastle in a beach, And there's always wind that's eroding the castle, and you're always trying to, rebuild it and make it look pretty again and everything, but with time it's always eroding and changing form. And that's the same thing with the ego, we go through changes in our lives, we lose people, or people treat us differently, or we lose possessions, friends, whatever. And all of these things really change us, change our ego. And I think it's really important to understand this, especially in these times, because, everyone's locked up right now. And in a sense, I feel like everyone is going through a mini ego dissolution because we can't have the lives that we used to have. And the world is like this big question mark. We don't know what's going to happen next. And that uncertainty definitely hits hard on the ego, So why am I saying this? Because I guess it makes it easier to understand first what your ego is and to consciously just let go of your ego instead of waiting for something in life to destroy it. It's more fun to destroy your ego yourself. And this is something that's healthy because if you do this, you can achieve more peacefulness inside of you and, enjoy life more and probably avoid a lot of unnecessary suffering. Because that's the thing, people that have unchecked egos and have really inflated egos, those are probably the people that will suffer more because No one is getting out of this life with an ego. When you die, your ego dies. So it's important to just know what your ego is and to consciously manage it. And there's many different techniques for this, first I guess I'll tell my experience. I used to have a huge ego, and maybe to some extent I still do by talking about the ego right now. But the way I've sort of managed my ego is through meditation, and just trying to become aware of what I really am. Think of what you really are as you're listening to this. Are you what you identify yourself with? And when I meditate, I can reach a point where I simply lose my sense of self. And, it's a really cool experience to realize that you are just this constellation of atoms that all of a sudden is starting to speak and create and, trying to act cool and all of this. Yeah, you're just a constellation of atoms, you're the same thing as the trees outside or the rocks or anything else you see in the universe. And this is where the experience of ego dissolution comes from. And there's many different ways you can experience ego dissolution. I guess the most common way is meditation or, psychedelic drugs, or, you can just starve yourself and maybe that does it. Or, but yeah, the point is that if you consciously decide to experience ego dissolution and let go of your ego, it can be very liberating, because when that happens, you realize that you are nothing and everything at the same time. You are a part of the universe that is manifesting itself as a human being and speaking and being. And when we let go of the ego, we can open up to what we really are. And every human being, what they really are is energy. And I think that energy, on the most profound level, is love, Every single human being wants to feel loved, and whether it's to feel loved by themselves or by other people or by society. Yet, I think the thing that gets in the way with love is the ego, right? Because if you have an inflated ego, you're just thinking of your ego and you're not thinking of how you're treating others and how you're treating yourself and where you're going in life. And, most people that have overinflated egos probably live very materialistic lives and don't think about the meaning of life or what it's all about. And yeah, so another thing of ego dissolution, or at least from my experience, is that when you get really deep into it, what you realize is that your ego is really like a garment you wear. And I guess your body too. It's like clothes that you wear and you put on every moment, and but it's not you. Your ego is not what you really are. What you really are is the awareness or the consciousness that is experiencing your ego, your body, your identity. Because I can say I am Rafael and I am, an artist and I am a good friend or whatever I identify myself with. But those are just things that I identify myself with. But what's the thing that is identifying itself with all of that, And that's a huge mystery. I mean, the word I use for it is just consciousness, and what consciousness is a mystery, right? Some people may think it's, the universe or God or both of those things at the same time. But when you think of consciousness and what you are, it's not that you have consciousness or that it's your consciousness. It's the consciousness. There's only one consciousness in this universe. And this consciousness is experiencing itself as me, as you, as everyone that is part of your life. So for me, that's like a profound realization that at the most fundamental level, we are all one. We are all one being experiencing itself through many different egos and forms. And when you view life from this point of view where you dissolve your ego, you have no choice but to look at everyone with love and compassion, because you know that they are you. That man in the street that is starving and has no money, that's you. And as well as the rich people in the world, that's you. And maybe it's not even just with humans, but with nature too, like all the animals and all the plants in the planet, that's like consciousness expressing itself in all these different forms. Yet we don't see it that way because we're so caught up in our egos. And so maybe that's the point of life and where we're heading, like all this random shit that's happening around the world is like we're about to go into this collective ego dissolution. So in a way, it's healthy. It's healthy to feel that your ego is being destroyed, because I feel that's the path of realizing what you really are. And it's consciousness, it's love, it's life, energy. And when you know this, it's so easy to just let go of what you're trying to be and flow and relax and have fun. And, it can even ease off some fear of death. So I hope whoever listened to this, it makes sense and it sparks some thoughts in you, because although some of you might think like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He's like going too far. And the others of you might be like, yeah, been there, done that. Like, yeah, I understand. But it's something that's so important, I think. And if you understand it and apply it in your life, it can help you heal and help you feel happier. And yeah, thanks for listening.